People ask me, how come I believe so fervently when archaeology, history, science, they all seem to converge to tell the university students that belief in the Bible is silly, and that all of this is just a bunch of fairy tales, and there's no difference between the God of Israel and Thor and Odin and Zeus. So let me tell you a little story. It's a story about Professor A.M. Hasofer, Avram Michael Hasofer, who just died recently. I've quoted him a couple of times in different videos. Professor Hasofer was born in Egypt. He was arrested by the Egyptian government when Israel declared its statehood, and as soon as he could, he ran to Israel, became a member of the armed forces. In fact, he was in ballistics. He made bombs so that the people in Israel could defend themselves. His wife of many years, Atara, of blessed memory, whom I know, Atara was a judo expert. And she also ran away from her family to go to Israel because she couldn't stand the narrow-mindedness of the old-fashioned homes. And together, it was a match made in heaven. 2 rebels, 2 patriots, 2 communists. In 1954, the communists arrested an Israeli socialist on the trumped-up charges that he was a British spy. And they knew this man. The man was a socialist, 100% dyed-in-the-wool socialist, communist. And they realized that all the stories that they heard about communism, that communism was a false ideology, where the few were tyrants over the many, using lies and innuendos for their power, all that was true. And here they had put their hopes and their dreams into building a socialist Israel, and socialism, communism, was a false idol. They decided to move. They moved as far away as they could to Tasmania. In Tasmania, got us a little job, and was just a regular Israeli atheist. One day, a group of Jewish families committee comes to the Professor Hasofer. We have some good news and some bad news. Bad news is that our rabbi is leaving. The good news is that we want you to be our new rabbi. See, the rabbi was an unofficial position, unpaid position, and the person who filled it was somebody who knew how to read Hebrew, who could read the Torah and lead them in prayers during the high holidays. Professor Hasofer objected. He said, wait a second, I don't even believe in God. No difference, doesn't make a difference. You're the only one who knows how to read Hebrew. We can't read Hebrew. You read Hebrew, you read the prayers. Don't make a difference what you believe. Just make it sound good. And that's what he did. In the course of him being the rabbi, he became acquainted with the Tanakh, Jewish tradition, and he even had a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, and became familiar with some of the laws. And his family started reading those things, and so they started becoming observant. This is where I get to the point. They started by lighting candles on Friday night, saying Kiddush. It was just a ritual to keep the kids together so that they could feel Jewish. And they could all be Jewish together. Because they're living in Hobart, in Tasmania, where there were maybe 100 Jews out of 300,000 people. 1 in every 3,000 people was a Jew. And so, he did it mainly to keep his family together as being Jewish, identifying themselves as Jewish. And then they decided, you know what, we should keep kosher. Kosher requires 2 sets of dishes, milk and meat. But they didn't know that if you buy a kosher set of dishes, the other set is treif. What are you going to do with it? How do you kosherize things that are not kosher? And how do you set things aside? And they had all different kinds of questions. What to do when things get mixed up? And so on. They didn't know what to do. And so the set of dishes remained till they could settle the question. They didn't know how to settle the questions. So they got frustrated. They couldn't get the information from the code of Jewish law. It wasn't enough information. And so they started praying for a teacher. They couldn't afford to go to the mainland. They were living hand to mouth. And so they prayed that God should send him a teacher. Finally, in his frustrations, the professor said, opens up a Tanakh, the book of the Torah and the prophets and the writings. And he says, listen here, if you're here and you're listening, I need a teacher. And according to your book, when the Jews needed a teacher, you sent him Moses, then you sent him Joshua, then you sent him Pinchas, and Shamgar, and you sent him Shimshon, and Dvorah, and Eli, and you sent him Shmuel. And he goes to David, and King Solomon, and Elijah the prophet, Achia Shiloni, Elisha, all those great leaders. You sent them a leader to teach them what they're supposed to do. I need a teacher. Send me a teacher. 2 days later, he's looking out the window. He sees a man with a Hamburg, with a beard, with a black coat. Obviously a rabbi. He doesn't know where he's going. He goes out into the street, gives him a big hug and says, Rabbi, I've been waiting for you. Takes him into his house, and the rabbi teaches him. They were so enthusiastic on his visit that they forgot to take the rabbi's name. They figured that's the end of it. They're never going to get another teacher again. Next year he came back, taught them other things. Finally they became observant. And for the sake of the kids, they moved to the mainland, to Australia. He got himself a job in Canberra, and he would visit the rabbi from time to time. The rabbi, when he would see him, would give him a big hug. The rabbi's daughter didn't understand what was going on. Why is my father so enamored with this guy? I never seen him. So she goes over to him and says, I know all of my father's friends. You're not one of them. How come my father gives you such a big hug as if you were best friends? I've never seen you before. She said, well, your father used to visit me when we lived in Tasmania. Oh, she said, you from Tasmania? She runs into parents' room, takes out a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Here, now I understand what this letter means. The professor looked at the letter. The letter said to the great Rabbi Gutnick, who was the rabbi who went to visit him. He was the chief chaplain of the Jewish forces of the armed services in Australia. He was the unofficial chief rabbi of Australia. And the Rebbe sent him a letter that says, my dear Rabbi Gutnick, I would like you to visit the Jews in Tasmania now. He had never heard of Jews in Tasmania before. He didn't know that there were any Jews there. But the Rebbe said, you have to go visit them now. So he took his towels and tefillin, got a plane to Tasmania, but didn't know where he was going. Didn't know where he was going to stay. But the Rebbe said, and he started walking down the streets trying to see if maybe there's a Schneider, maybe there's a tailor shop, that's a Jewish tailor shop, Klein's tailor shop, Smith's shoe store. Maybe there's Moshe's delicatessen. Maybe there's something that's Jewish. Nothing. And finally, he's walking down almost distraught that he's not going to see a Jew. The professor comes out and gives him a hug, and then he understood the purpose of the Rebbe's letter. The professor looked at the letter and looked at the date of the letter. The date of the letter was around the same time he was yelling to God that, look, you sent Moses, then you sent Moses' student. And if there's a Moses in this generation, you should send me a teacher, or you should come teach me yourself. And he realized right then and there that there was a knowledge of God, and that indeed there was a Moses in the generation who was sensitive to his needs, and sent him a teacher right then and there. And that is why the professor and his wife became followers of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, knowing that the Rebbe was the man who cared about Jewish people and their education, Jewish education all over the world. And he was one of the greatest statistical mathematicians of this generation. And may his memory be a blessing. I realize the colleagues that I have and the people that I've met, men of letters, men of great knowledge, all believed in the Torah, believed in the stories and the traditions, believed in the creation, and believed in the God of Israel, who is the universal God, the ultimate wisdom, the beginner of the original cause that started the universe before the Big Bang.